Hey, welcome everyone. I'm Robert Sanchez, and this, of course, is the famous Dr. Peter Weinstein. And what I want to do first here is I want to explain why we're coming to you today. Peter and I were talking the other day about how there is this tremendous energy within thought leaders in the industry to really speak to how to hold on, how to triage, how to manage your cash flow and get through this. But what we're thinking is could there be an opportunity to use this crisis to really rethink what it means to be a veterinary practice to your community? Are there opportunities to deepen and broaden the way that we make an impact on people and pets' lives and enhance the amount of value that we deliver to them? And that very likely could have some pretty meaningful repercussions. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about, what could this opportunity be? What would it look like to put it into place? What would the consequences be of doing exactly that? And then what are the next steps that any interested practices should take in order to start actually executing and doing this? What do you think, Peter?
Robert, always great to see you. Thank you so much for the invitation to sit here and throw feces at the wall and see what sticks.
I love it too, Peter.
You have a beautiful white wall behind you. I'm going to throw a lot. I think if we don't take the last 2 months as a learning opportunity as a profession, we are missing out on a great chance to rethink, reimagine, reconfigure, and re-deliver on a profession that was desperate, in my opinion, was desperately in need of recalibration. Mm. So I'm eager to see what we have learned, and I'm eager to see what we can bring forward. And my greatest concern is the tendency for even those people who go through change to return back to the warm, cozy environs of their den and go back to the way things were, rather than assimilating and acclimating into a new environment and creating a new den, one that may be more welcoming and warmer for people around them.
Mm. And I think you said it, Peter. We resist change often because it feels unsafe, and as a profession, these clinicians know what they do, and there's safety in that feeling and not venturing outside of it. But really, it seems like that's the real risk, is never reevaluating the core, the first principles of what it is that you are to these pets and these people. So you had mentioned that there was kind of a deep need for recalibration within the profession. Could you talk more about what you mean by that?
I've been involved with veterinary medicine for a long time. I know it doesn't look that way, but the delivery of veterinary care, even in the small animal world, which is really a relatively young profession compared to other healthcare professions, and mixed animal and food animal, is still very much the same way we did it 100 years ago. If you watch the old episodes of All Creatures Great and Small, James Herriot might have been paid in bacon and eggs, but he was still a very doctor-centric, very linear business model. Yeah. And he was the center of all that was said and done within the veterinary profession. I think the world has changed, and we have to think about team-centered businesses. We have to think about client-centered business models, and we have to think about where the doctor fits into all of this as the healthcare provider, but also as the visionary and as the one who defines the why. I think this really all goes back to why. Why do we do what we do? And sometimes we fall back on a why that is strictly capitalistic. And there's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong, that money is a good thing. But most people in the veterinary field are not in it for the money. The money is the outcome of doing things for patients.
Yeah.
I think we have to go back to the patient and the client first, and that will deliver the outcomes, which will be cash flow in some way, shape, or form. So the bottom line is we've been ready for a change. I think you and I talked about this at one point in time. There was an article, and I have to find it, that basically said that the center of the brain that responds to change is the same center of the brain that responds to excruciating pain.
Hmm.
So it probably explains why we are, as a people, reticent to change.
Yeah. Yeah. So what does that look like? Like if we were to reimagine the veterinary profession from the ground up, and kind of discard whatever is more a vestige of the past, instead of an essential pillar of how we are, how we're building this, what would it look like?
I think we need to listen to what people want. We've always delivered what we want as veterinarians.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking as a former hospital owner. We delivered what we thought people wanted. And unless you ask people what they want, or until they tell you what they want by walking from your practice and going someplace else, I think we need to give people what they want. Now, not on the medical side of things. I don't believe that we should have people dictating how we treat patients, but I am eager to have people help us deliver a new model of veterinary care and a veterinary service that meets their needs. My needs as a baby boomer are different than your needs as a millennial. And this whole Gen Z that's coming up behind us scares the bejesus out of me, because I don't think anybody understands what they want. So I think, just as an example, this current COVID environment has forced practices to change and adapt and adopt new technologies. Well, I'm sitting across the screen from somebody who is a techno geek in a philosopher's mind. And that's what my two daughters, who are millennials, want. They like this concept of food being delivered to their home. They love the concept of the Amazon delivery of everything. My kids share my Prime account. You're not listening to this, Amazon, I hope. But they share my Prime account, so I get to see everything that they order. Well, they don't live at home, and they're having things delivered, and it's like, okay, why don't I just get them a Prime account? But they want immediate delivery. They want immediate gratification at 3 o'clock in the morning when they think of something. Well, so do our clients. They want to be able to refill a prescription online when they think about it, and have it delivered and arrive when they go home to pick up the mail the next day, or whatever the case may be. The advent and integration of telemedicine has been something that just got blown out of the water. I mean, if you think about it, where we were on February 1 when it came to telemedicine, and where we are at May 1 when it comes to telemedicine, it's the difference between night and day. So those types of technologies, and I would suggest that in many cases, even the drive up, drive by, dock in the box, curbside concierge check-in, whatever we want to call it today, because it'll change its title tomorrow, is a service-based approach to things that's different than we did in the past. What we did in the past is we put people in the waiting room, like they were going to catch a train. They're in the waiting room. And they brought with them a book, whether it was on a Kindle or in their hands. And it was usually like Gone with the Wind, War and Peace, or Harry Potter 7. And they figured if they brought something that long, they'd have a chance to finish it while waiting to get into the exam room to see the doctor. Well, that ain't exactly service-oriented, is it?
No.
That I'm the doctor, I'm the ego, I'm the center of attention, I'll get to you when I can.
So it sounds like we've, largely kind of built a lifestyle business that is insensitive to, at the very least, the modern customer and really what their problems are and what they want. And because we've engineered the system backwards, it creates all these points of tension and friction between the customer and the service, where really there should be much, much deeper integration. Is that right?
Yeah, I concur. And I wouldn't necessarily call it a lifestyle business per se, because it depends on whose lifestyle you're talking. From a lifestyle standpoint, we built it around our lifestyle, not the lifestyle of the consumer or the client.
Right.
And we haven't adapted to the changing generational changes because they came on us so quickly. I mean, right now, millennials are the largest population with the largest amount of cash. And so what are we doing to help address these multiple generations of cash, these multiple generations of people with different needs? I mean, my generation has different needs than your generation that has different needs. And if I go back to pet owners that are older than myself and pet owners that are younger than you. So we almost have to have a fluid practice as opposed to a static practice. And we may have to have approaches that are customized to Robert Sanchez and his little white dog versus, me and my golden retriever, or whatever the case may be. So flexibility, fluidity, I think we've been a very static profession. And I think what's interesting is we made so many changes in the last 2 months that we don't even know that we've made them anymore. And we made them without, well, maybe with a little bit of pushback. Now they're there. Yeah. And what does it take? 21 to 28 days of doing something from a habitual standpoint that it becomes a habit. We've built new nerves, new neurons, new neuron pathways, and they've gotten stronger and stronger because we've been doing them for 2 months. Well, keep some of them. Let's find new ones and think differently. Everybody was all over Steve Jobs, and then he introduced the iPod. 1,000 songs in your pocket. Then he introduced the iPhone, which was a game changer and a life changer, and iTunes Music and everything else. And now everybody is playing catch up to what Apple has done from a rethinking and a reimagining standpoint. Time for people to catch up with veterinarians in terms of the rethinking and reimagining that we can do.
That's so interesting. Churchill said, "Never waste a good crisis," and that's what I find myself thinking about here. It's fascinating. I mean, it's horribly sad what's happening, but the way that it's forced us to adapt. That's what I find really interesting, is what opportunity is there. Like you said, it's causing us to form new neural pathways in the way that we think about medicine. And can we take this deeper? Can we use this as an opportunity to see how to build a much more customer-centric model that's going to prepare us for the future, for what comes next? We're probably going to walk right into a recession, right? If we're lucky after this. So it seems to me like the best defense against a recession is having as large of a customer base as possible, with as fanatical and bonded clients that you can have. And I think the way to do that is by being as sensitive as you can to what they really care about, And for me, and you mentioned my little white dog, she's sitting right there. I'll put her on my lap later in this call. What I really care about is more moments, more love, more life with her. You know, I don't really care about anything else. That's all a means to an end. So how can you find ways that you can more deeply impact my ability to do that? And are there opportunities that we really have been ignoring within the field, that telemedicine might allow us to begin addressing between the conventional visits, you know, in more global, in deeper ways? What do you think, Peter?
You just gave a mouthful.
Yeah.
Um, I think I think you are an empath,
Mm.
and veterinarians tend to be empathetic as well and compassionate. But we're empathetic and compassionate about the pet. We sometimes forget about the pet owner.
Yeah.
So I think I think in many cases we are so focused on the lab work, the radiographs, the diagnostics, and the strengths that we have in those areas that we forget about how we say things. And it's interesting to watch human healthcare TV shows and watch the interns develop and grow into residents and residents into attending physicians and how they learn the communication skills.
Yeah.
What's even better, and I think we've seen this um, in the video clips that we see on the news feeds, that most of the video clips are of nurses, not of doctors. And the empathy that they have and show for clients and and patients in the hospitals that we're seeing right now. So if we're going to look at your needs, we need to ask a better question.
Mm.
We need to ask it differently. We need to ask more probing questions, more subjective input, and we need to possibly do it with the right people asking the question. And a piece of paper isn't always the right way to get that information. It's possibly a one-on-one conversation with somebody on the phone when you're making an appointment, or in the exam room with an exam room advocate, nurse, technician, whatever we want to call it, who is people skilled first, patient skilled second. So I really do think that if we want to take the lead going forward, we have to listen more and learn from what we hear and talk less and give people what they want.
Mm. You know, it would be so striking for me to walk into a veterinary practice and to have somebody sit down and just relate to me and say, you know, tell me about Lula. What are you worried about? Like, what's on your mind? And really work to probe the deeper layers of, you know, what I'm bringing to this encounter internally, and figure that out. uh, that would be such an interesting approach. And you know, I can speak for myself as a millennial who, uh, I'm unmarried. You know, I have no kids. I have two dogs that I love very, very much, and I would sell my car if it meant saving them. Um, I'm the ideal client. You know, I'm who you. There are plenty others, but I'm one of the people that you really want to see. And if you want to make an impact, if you want to show me that you're serious about really internalizing what I care about and making a difference in my life, it might be good to start developing strategies to really listen to what's there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would go back to something as simple as a question that I think we used to talk about 20, 25 years ago when I was doing some consulting with Tom Catanzaro. Something similar to, where does your pet sleep at night?
Mm.
What role does your pet play in the family? Um, you know, those types of things. And it's interesting because in a prior world, prior life, we were all over pet owners for giving their pets treats. But we forgot the fact that that is a form of bonding between the pet owner and the pet. And in many cases, it's the show of love, and it strengthens the human animal bond by giving your pet a treat, an appropriate treat, sometimes a low calorie treat, but giving them a treat. So I'm guessing, Robert, that somewhere in and around your desk in relatively close proximity, or at least a short walk, you've got little Lula treats to give her for doing things that are cute, or even for just coming up and sitting next to your side.
I have those low calorie mini Zoot treats. I think they're like 3 calories each or something like that. She loves them.
By the end of the day, when you've given her 100 of them, but you know, those types of conversations, maybe we shouldn't be dissuading people from giving treats, but maybe we should talk about using treats to strengthen the human animal bond. I think what's interesting is we talk about it, the HAB, the human animal bond, and we say we want to do it, but I really do think we need to go back to that human animal bond and live it and build our practice around it. I mean, I'm all for fear-free and very much in support of that, but that's just one component of this bond that we need to focus on.
I love that. So what, and I think you're totally right that when we say the human animal bond, it can just seem sort of ethereal. It's almost turned into, in some cases, more of a platitude. And so how do we really strategize about how to do this? Because you're right. Like what I care about is the relationship that I share with my pet. I want to get as much out of that. I want her to get as much out of that as possible. So what do you think? What are different ways to really begin addressing that with creative ways to to really make a difference?
I think one of the bigger solutions that we can look at is the people that we have around us. I don't think this is all about it doesn't have to be all about me, the veterinarian. It could be about Crystal, my client service team. It could be about Patty, my technician, and finding people who are empathic and finding people who are communicators and finding people who can relate. And maybe when Robert comes in, I find a millennial technician to go in the room with Robert and have that conversation. When I go in as a pet owner, a baby boomer, I want to maybe have somebody who can relate to me and not have some of the millennial affectations that are going on and doesn't necessarily walk in the room with a cell phone in their hand. So not to generalize you or anything like that, but so I think it's the people that we surround ourselves with. I think veterinarians should set the direction and set the focus based upon conversations that they have with their team. And I think they should hire a team to help identify what the clients want and then let the team build that model where the doctor provides the care and communicates the diagnosis, the treatment plan, does the surgery, sets the prescriptions, all those things that they have to do legally. But I think that the more we can leverage the veterinary team to deliver the experience, the better we will be. Instead of the doctor being the only one who gives the client a business card, I think everybody in the practice should give them a cell phone number, a business card, an email address, so that they can feel that anybody in that practice is a part of the team. That's where I think this needs to start. I think it needs to start with a vision from the veterinarian, and then I think it needs to expand into getting a team who buy into and help clarify the vision and the mission, and then set the processes to make it happen. So I mentioned to this when we were in the green room prepping, that people plus processes equals profits. The right people doing the right things will make your business profitable.
I think that's such sound thinking and so interesting. And really where we've arrived at is a fundamentally different approach to a veterinary business model than we've had before, which is essentially, from my understanding, it's we're going to uh, build a business that does its best to treat every single pet with the highest medical standards possible, instead of this first necessary step, which is how do I really connect with the people who are bringing these pets to us? How do I understand at a deeper level really what their needs are, and then build a strategy around that, around how they're just, coming to you, even if they don't know it, saying, can you make a difference? Can you help me do right by my pet? Can you help me be their hero? Can you help us live longer and happier together in ways that I obviously couldn't have anticipated coming into you, because I'm not the professional. So one thing that I think is so interesting, and you and I are both, I think, big fans of telemed as an additional technology to connect with people in ways that we normally can't. I think it would be interesting to really explore how we can use that to enhance the way that we think about uh, changing lives. For example, a friend of mine will commonly say at conferences, who who do your clients ask more about nutrition? Is it you, or is it the 18-year-old retail employee at Petco, right? So what are the opportunities to really think about, uh, you know, caring for and bonding with our pets uh, in ways that utilize these new technologies that we've largely ignored to this point?
Well, I think telemedicine is a tool. Um, I think it's a tool that's currently being used as a problem diagnosis solving option.
Yeah.
But that's after the issue has already arisen or exists. I think that the role of the veterinary practice, the veterinary profession, the veterinary team should be that of teacher, of educator, of problem preventer, so that we don't need telemedicine. We don't even need patient visits, because we have prevented the problems from occurring through appropriate nutrition, appropriate exercise, appropriate preventative care, etc. Many of the problems that occur in younger pets were fully preventable, whether it's a rattlesnake bite or a foreign body ingestion, or a pork bone or a corn cob, whatever the case may be. So I think what the role should be is not using telemedicine just as a diagnostic tool, but I think it's using all sorts of modalities and social media and websites and everything else as a education tool, as an outreach tool, as a boy, did you know that tool, and to constantly be spoon feeding our clients with information that eventually becomes knowledge, that eventually becomes, oh, I really shouldn't be doing that. Or, oh, why didn't I do that? Or, oh, I need to do that. Because we have been such a reactive profession. I mean, we thrive on the ability to make an income in a reactive fashion. But I think that we could do a much better job as a proactive fashion. So I think telemedicine is a small tool, and I'm not sure it's going to ever be a large portion of our revenue stream. But if we pick up the phone, not us necessarily the doctors, but the team pick up the phone and say, hi, Robert, just wanted to touch base to see how things were going with Lula. Last time she was in, we noted that she was, probably a body condition score of 7 out of 9. Have you been doing anything to help with her weight control? And just wanted to just check and make sure, because we don't want to run into some of the problems that we deal with from a weight control standpoint down the road. That's telemedicine, by the way, Robert, because you picked up the phone and gave somebody a call. You could have sent a text. Texting is telemedicine. email, it can be considered telemedicine as well. So all of these things, sorry, technology, all of these things are telemedicine. I did telemedicine in the 1980s. It's called, here's my cell phone, clients, give me a call.
Yeah.
Or we're 90s, or whenever first cell phones came out, you know, the big bricks. So I think we're hung up on one tool right now, which is telemedicine. But I really think we should be teleclient, telefriend, telesource, tele whatever the case may be. We have not done, as a profession, a really good job of educating our clients individually. And we've done it globally, but it takes much more work to do it individually. And I think that's what clients want. I think Robert Sanchez wants to know what to do to keep Lula happy, healthy, pain-free for as long as we possibly can, and then be there to support Lula and Robert when the time comes to have a good death. So, but we spend way too much time in a reactive fashion when we really should be proactive, reaching out to people. So telemedicine right now, and the way it's being discussed, is really helping to connect clients and hospitals who have a medical need. But let's reverse it. Why aren't hospitals reaching out to clients and helping them prevent having medical needs? Sorry, that was a little bit.
I think, you know, that's just such a different endpoint than, you know, than where we are right now as an industry, where it is this totally incredibly well-meaning but largely reactive model. And really what we're talking about is, how do we become much more customer centric, sensitive to what it is that people actually want and how they want to connect with you, and bring in, you know, unseen level of proactivity to guiding them along the road, not just once a year, you know. Like how limited is once a year contact? How many things happen every single day with your pets that you should be aware of? But how do we start reimagining how we can be proactive in a major role in their lives, so that we are effectively guiding them through everything, and we are, you know, cutting down on accidents and illness and injury, in really helping them live life on their own terms and the way they want to. So I guess what I would ask is, you know, I don't want this to seem too abstract. I'd like to give people some practical guidance on how they can begin reimagining their business model kind of from the inside out, from a totally different perspective. So what, you know, what questions should we start asking, and what would be the next steps to really kind of take this by the horns here?
I think I'd take a step further back.
Okay.
Which is, right now, and I talk about this in practices. I live in Orange County, California. You're down in San Diego. If I drop a pin on my house and drew a 5-mile radius or a 10-mile radius, I could probably hit 40 to 60 veterinary hospitals.
Yeah.
Now, if we take the specialists out, which I've got like 10 boarded surgeons, 6 ophthalmologists, 5 oncologists, and a partridge in the pear tree. But what do they do that's different? Well, they really don't. They all provide vaccinations and spays and neuters and itchy skin and fecals and deworming and microchips and all the basic stuff. So what maybe we need to start to think about practices that are customized to the care that clients want. And maybe there's a little white dog practice that's built specifically for Robert Sanchez and all the little white dog owners out there that want customized, personalized care. I don't think we can be everything to everybody, and we've been trying to do that. We've been a jack of all trades, and as a result, a master of none. And I think we have to look at it from a financial standpoint as well, because Robert Sanchez, before digital empathy exploded into the scene and made a huge impact in all the veterinary hospitals in the world, Robert Sanchez was eating top ramen, and the ability for him to deliver veterinary care for Lula was different than it is now, where basically he's got a yacht in the Pacific Ocean.
I don't
So
have a yacht to any listeners.
you can edit this.
Yeah.
um, but we have to find ways to deliver care to all people at all levels to afford care too, because if you listen to what we've been talking about, it almost creates such a level that the average consumer thinks that they couldn't afford it. But I think they can. I think they can. And I think it's by creating this customized experience. And I think it's by choosing clients who want that experience and telling them over the phone what to expect, or on your website, preferably, because that's where they'll find you, what to expect, and let them choose you. We have in Orange County, in San Diego, in LA, New York, Chicago, Miami, Dallas, we have a herd of Holstein cows. They're all black and white cows. We call them veterinary hospitals. Okay? Clients can't tell one cow from another. They just know they all produce milk. All right? So what can we do in our practices to be a unique cow, or, to quote Seth Godin, to be a purple cow?
Mm.
And that is the experience that they have on the phone, the experience that they have through the website, the experience that they have through social media, the experience they have in the parking lot, in the front desk, in the waiting room, even in the exam rooms. And we've got to find and create that experience, because some people want in and out. They only want a choice of, you want a double, cheese or no cheese, chocolate shake, vanilla shake. And others want an actual smorgasbord from which to choose from. But if you try to do both, how do you make everybody happy? You don't. You go crazy. So that's where some of this concept of business model changes is, why don't we create a business model that we can enjoy as veterinarians and that clients can enjoy as well? And I think it means outreach. I think it means hyper communicating. I think it means hiring personalities that are outgoing and not introverts. We tend to hire people like ourselves when it comes to veterinarians. And just thinking about it in different ways, and maybe creating models that are more affordable, because we don't have all the bells and whistles. And maybe we have, and I'm not sure if we've talked about this, but I could really be an advocate for concierge clinics, which basically have a membership model where you pay X amount per year to have access to me and my time. There's so many different things that we can do, or we can do what elephants do. Grab the tail of the elephant in front of them and walk around looking at one view all the time, except for the lead elephant. And that lead elephant is the one who's been directing this profession for the last 5,000 years. They've got a great view. The only problem in veterinary medicine about the lead elephant is they grab the tail of some other elephant. So now we're just walking in circles.
Yeah.
The elephant's butt that's in front of us.
My hypothesis is that the measure of a business's value to a customer, any business, any customer, is defined by the way that they make that customer feel. I think that the reason why Apple and Nike are so successful is because they make their customers feel a certain way. You'll notice they communicate fundamentally differently than other companies, right? What they do is first off, they tell a story, but it's not a story about them. It's a story about their customer. It's about a story about their customers' hopes and dreams and fears and wishes. When you look at Nike's marketing and their slogan, what's it look like? It's people who overcome adversity and reach greatness. And their slogan is what? Just do it. And the hidden words behind that is, there is greatness within you. You are good enough. Just do it. And so I think that would be such an interesting lens to view this profession, is to stop obsessively thinking so much about what we want and bring that level of obsessive compulsion to thinking about who our customers are and what our customers want and the kind of story that they want to tell. And I'll tell you, so I do, I still do our discovery calls when we're working on building a website, and I ask them, why'd you do this? Why do you exist? What makes this place unique and special? And most of them have an inkling of it, at least, but almost none of them think about this with the level of clarity that's going to let you truly step into what makes you special as a practice and serve that finite tribe. And I think you're totally right that we kind of treat customers as this homogenous blob that we're going to see as many as we can. But you're never going to be as successful as possible as a business like that, financially, emotionally, whatever metric you're using. Where you're going to be successful is where you draw a circle around a tribe, a type of customer, and say, I'm going to change your life. And this is how I'm going to do it.
Yeah, and I was guilty of that when I was in practice as well. And especially as a startup, I would have taken any penny from anybody who wanted to come in and give it to me. And then when we became successful, it became harder and harder to filter out those clients that drove you crazy,
Yeah.
and those clients that were your raving fans.
Right.
I think the interesting thing is the definition of value. And the value to Robert Sanchez pre-digital empathy was answer my questions, solve my problems, and do it in the most affordable fashion that's best for Lula. Mm. And that's fine for pet owners, but we can't supersize an upsell and give them the huge Slurpee if they can only afford a bottle of water. But we try to do that because we know it's the best thing for Lula, but what's the best thing for Lula isn't always what's the best thing for Robert. We need to figure out that balancing act between the two. Value in some clients is time, that they feel that they got their questions answered and that they got an appropriate amount of time that they had with the veterinarian or the team or the practice. Time stands still when the doctor's in the room. Time drags on when they're alone in the room or sitting in the waiting room. So what kind of client experience can we make so that time stands still? And it's such a marvelous experience. I mean, just think about the things that we think about from a negative standpoint. The line at the DMV, the line at the post office, the line at the Costco gas station. And the interesting one is the line at the Costco gas station, people have a choice. So there must be something in that Costco experience that drives them to wait 10 or 15 minutes for gas, when for 10 cents more, they can go in, pull up, get their gas, and be done. So I don't know, but that's we need to think about what the definition of value is and the value proposition for each client and each practice. And the problem is we can't have multiple value propositions because it drives the freaking staff crazy when we do two pets come in with the same problem and we treat them two different ways, or we've got the expensive doctor and the cheap doctor, or we've got the doctor who profiles clients based upon what they drive in or the way they look and doesn't offer the best care. So I think that concept of value proposition is an interesting one, and it could be a filter that helps the clients get directed to the practice that might be most appropriate for the level of care that they want and where the pet sleeps. Is it utilitarian or is it a pillow?
It's such an interesting question to ask. And so could you maybe begin describing what this might look like, maybe one variation on this theme of what this kind of practice of the future could be, how it would function, how it would feel, the questions it would ask.
I think that we need to look at less sterile practices. We need to look at practices that are more inviting. I think we need to do away with the reception desk with a bunch of busy bobbing heads on computers and telephones, and put a concierge, put a case manager, put a greeter there. And what's interesting, and maybe this is a learning proposition that came out of COVID, is we've gone from this waiting room with a congregation of people and a congregation of staff to a situation where a client pulls up and sends you a text or a phone call, and you gather information over the phone. You go out, get the patient, bring it in, do the services in the room by phone or by video, whatever the case may be, bring it back out. So it's one client, one patient, one car, one staff member, one exam room, one doctor. There is no waiting room.
Yeah.
So why can't we build a business model that doesn't have a waiting room, and that maybe we have more exam rooms and more nurses, because the receptionist isn't going to be necessarily there to greet people, but they'll be spending more time on the phone in a quiet area. And we're charging clients out in the room or online instead of having to send them to the receptionist. So this concept of one doctor, one staff, one patient, one client is very personal, isn't it?
Mm.
And that nurse or technician now has a business card and is the primary case manager for that client and the pet. And so Robert doesn't have to call Dr. Weinstein. Robert can call Kathy and talk to Kathy. And Kathy is given permission to get on the phone, or has her own voicemail box and has her own email address, or whatever the case may be. So I would like to see much more personalized care. And I think, Mike Dix used to say earns or turns. You can make more per visit, or you can have more visits and still get to the same outcome. I really think that we need to, I don't think we can do both. I think it's so hard as a veterinarian to do both, that if you want to spend time with clients, then you set up a high value business model and you have fewer turns and higher earns. And I think if you want to have clients who are just really in a rush, I mean, heck, most millennials think they need to be somewhere before they even get there, but they're always late getting there. Maybe they don't want to have that same experience. Maybe time isn't their value, but it's their time and getting in and out. And we provide that. But I don't think it's easy to do that in the same business any longer. I think it's so hard to meet everybody's needs. And so I would look at these one-on-one relationships. I would look at if you have a waiting room, it's more couches than chairs that you would have had in your elementary school. I think that there's constant sources of education being sent out to clients, whether it's by text, whether it's by email, whether it's by social media. I think we should be using the phone to make more outgoing calls, beyond just the follow-up calls, but educational calls. I think, and this will never happen, but I think we need to start using handwritten letters again, postcards and other things that are handwritten, because let's go back a little bit. It's just like really cool to go look at your parents' handwritten letters to you from when you were a kid.
Yeah.
I think we need to go back a little bit to be able to go forward. And my grandfather was a classic general practitioner back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Marcus Welby, for those of you who are old enough to remember that. And everybody knew him. And, they would come. His hospital was in the first floor of his house. I'm not suggesting we want to go back to that, but I am suggesting that this concept of having a relationship, but not just with the doctor, but with the team and with the individuals, and the experience that clients have comes from the team, and the doctors are a part of the team, not necessarily the sun, the moon, and the stars. That was just some random thoughts.
Well, I think that's just so interesting. And, my inclination would be to invite this as an opportunity to reimagine the way that a visit works from the experience of the client, and more specifically, from how that particular part of the chain makes that client feel, right? I know I detest being in a waiting room with other dogs and cats because it really stresses out Cole and Lula. Lula takes any dog larger than her as an existential threat. And so I would much prefer not just be sitting there. I'd much prefer to have an experience where it really felt like I came first, and it was something almost kind of tailored to me that obviously could operate at scale. And so, how are you making people? We all have the same needs, right? We like to pretend we're different, but we're not. We all really we need the same things in life. We need to feel safe physically and emotionally. We want to feel like we matter, right? Status. We want to respect ourselves. We want to feel like others feel like we're important and we're respected. We want to feel like we belong, in the place where we are. And we want love, right? We want to connect. And so how do we reimagine the visits that people have within our practice? And we're starting to do this for pets with Fear Free, but we are totally punting on how to do this for people. So how do we reimagine the experience that people have within your practice from the perspective of how are we meeting those deeper human needs at every single touch point? When you get there, how are you making me feel like I belong? When I'm in the exam room, how are you making me feel safe and important? And with the doctor, how are you connecting with me? How are you helping me feel this pure unadulterated love with this little creature that looks at me like I'm her whole world, like I'm her hero? And then from there, how do we start reimagining what are all the different ways that we can connect with you outside the practice? How do we demolish the front door and begin thinking creatively about what are your actual problems? How do I begin to guide you at much more frequent and meaningful and valuable intervals? I just think that would be so interesting to see people take on.
Well, I think what what experiences have you had? And this is not you, but the global you.
Yeah,
What experience have you had where that you felt unique and special? I had LASIK done,
yeah,
LASIK done, not LASIK done, LASIK done, and it was an amazing experience. Freaking expensive for 15 minutes, but it was an amazing experience. It was like going into a living room and then going back to some high tech areas, but you were rarely alone during that situation.
yeah,
Um, there are some hotels that you go to that give you that same high level experience.
mm,
What business models um, can we emulate? Because I don't think we should be emulating other veterinary hospitals per se until we push the bar up. But
yeah,
what other business models can we emulate? So there's Starbucks, and people go to Starbucks for that Starbucks experience or the McDonald's experience or whatever the case may be.
Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A, well, and just like veterinary hospitals, they're not open on Sunday, um, different reasons. But um, I think we need to look at business models, and when it comes to the lower cost models too, there are some lower cost business models, clinics that are in like a CVS next to the pharmacy. What
Yeah,
can we do to give people and fulfill the needs that different people have at different times? And I don't have a hospital, so I am a pet owner and a client. And it is so hard for me to be a client. And I'm sure it's hard for you to be a client too, because you've been in enough hospitals and talked to enough hospitals that you go in and all you can do is be a critic
mm,
because, could they do it better?
yeah,
So what business models that are out there that have been successful could we emulate? And if you want to be Kmart, fine. If you want to be Target, fine. If you want to be Nordstrom's, fine. But you've tried to find a Nordstrom's, Target, Kmart business model, and I'm looking at a 5 and 10 in a small town. You know, it's just really hard to do. You know, at times I almost want to go back to Mayberry or someplace else that was just a small town community, because I think it's really hard living in an urban suburban sprawl to meet everybody's needs. But the bottom line is we just got to think differently, and we got to think outside the box, and we've got to build our future thought businesses for what clients are looking for, and communicate that we built this for you. We built this based upon what we perceive your needs are, based upon surveys that we did. I was reading somewhere where a chiropractor who was moving into a town with a gajillion other chiropractors literally walked around like a politician, visiting thousands of homes in the community and asking them what they were looking for if they were going to go to a chiropractor, and then built his practice based upon the hours of availability that most of his clients were there, the services that they wanted, the needs that they had. I thought that was pretty darn cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's time to recalibrate, reconfigure, reimagine, and rethink. And those who do so will be the purple cow.
Here's to that. Well, we're coming up on just about an hour here. So do you have any other parting advice that you'd like to give people before we adjourn?
Well, I would give parting advice, and tell you how Robert does his thinking, because I know that he just sits up on a mountaintop with his guru and little microdosing of various hallucinogenics,
Allegedly.
LSD. And I think that's where we need to go as well. Not necessarily with the LSD, because that could be a Practice Act violation and you could lose your license. But I do think that it is amazing how many great ideas I get in the car, in the shower, walking the dog. Of course, when you don't have any paper and any place to write, and then you forget when you get out of the shower, or just before you wake up in the morning. So I think if people can capture their life experiences and things that they enjoyed, and run with them in a fashion in their practice, I think their clients would appreciate that as well. So the bottom line is, start to ask the tough questions. Listen to the answers. Listen to the answers. Don't talk over the answers. And engage your team and ask them, what can we do better to more engage our clients and give them a better client and patient experience? What can we do to give our clients a better patient experience that will ultimately give us as a team and an owner a better experience ourselves?
I think that's prophetic. And you know, I've always found that what was more valuable is really just finding the right question to ask. You know, the answers follow from there. And I think what's tough for people is a lot of times when you ask a really good question, sometimes with just the way our minds are set up and the way we're conditioned, what we hear is self-doubt, and it's noisy. And we have to find a way to kind of to de-identify with that noise. You know, the way Steve Jobs did it is his favorite way when he had a problem he was working on is he'd take a walk, you know, and that was kind of his way of getting out of his head and allowing his mind to flow naturally. So I think it would be just so interesting for us to really start asking these deeper, more meaningful, and frankly radical, and they should be, questions, and then have the self-compassion to listen to ourselves and know that we usually, when we find the right question to ask, we usually know the answer instinctively. We just have to listen. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining Dr. Peter Weinstein and myself. I hope that you took value from this, and thank you for doing everything that you do.
Thank you, Robert. Hang in, hang loose, and we will come out of this much more happy than we went into it. So.
I agree. Thank you.